It's almost every little girl's dream to picture yourself in Cinderella's shoes and dancing the dance with Prince Kit and wearing that enormous dress, and then I got to do that. I got to live a little bit of life like Cinderella, even though it didn't quite feel like Cinderella, because even when you have the dress on and your makeup's done, hair is done, you're still on a set with all the other people doing their thing and trying to not step on the dress, do the steps correctly, and also act like you're Cinderella. There's a lot of other aspects that went into the shoot, and I didn't always feel like Cinderella on that shoot, but looking back, it was an experience of a lifetime, and it was so fun to dance in the dress. So the dance scene was really where I knew we wanted to spotlight the dress, because the dance is such an iconic part of the Cinderella film. And it's kind of when you fully, I don't know, for me at least, it's when you fully just appreciate the story and the grandeur of what Ella is experiencing, and just everything kind of comes together in the dance scene. So the first step in that was to break down the dance steps and learn it. That's when we brought in Erin, who is my sister-in-law, and she really just took over that part of it, figuring out the choreography.
I love dancing, so it was really neat to be part of it. I did show choir and we did theater growing up, and so I actually helped choreograph a lot of dances and stuff. I knew some basic ideas like giving names to different dance moves so it's easy to follow along. So I had written all that out and came up with all the names of each move and everything.
Circle 3, 4, and then pivot, pivot, dip, and then we'll do it one more time. 2, 3, 4, 2, 3, waltz, 2, 3, 2, 2, 3, spin, 2, 3, back to waltz, 1, 2, 3.
The original has so much camera movement going on that it's sometimes hard to figure out what they're actually doing with the steps of the dance and the dress, and like the dress is covering up Ella's feet for the majority of it. So bringing in Erin was a very important part in these steps of creating this production. There's one person that needed to be brought in that really was very important for the finished video, and that was Prince Kit.
Bryce is my brother.
You just can't let your rank though.
Scandal.
This is the scandalous version of Cinderella.
Yeah.
Bryce and I would just like choreograph dances and fight scenes depending on who was in charge that day.
The dance was not too hard to learn. It was mostly waltzing, so the steps were, I've known how to waltz. So I did show choir, so I did lots of lifts in there, as well as choreographing some of show choir dances. I think the hardest part was watching the Cinderella dance video and trying to figure out what they were doing so that we could replicate it.
That was actually the fun part, would be after I'd spent all this time looking at it and analyzing what had happened, and Bella had spent all the time doing it, and Bryce also. Each time we did the dance, we'd find something else that, you know what, this isn't working, why is this not working? And it was the left hand instead of the right or something, or they're spinning a different direction. So there's so many different angles in the movie, it's really hard to break it all down. But yeah, so we finally did after everyone tried it.
Learning the dance was honestly not too hard for me. I grew up dancing and waltzing and polka and all that, so I had that experience, but it was my first time learning like choreography for a specific dance. So we would kind of just dance to a song and, you know, do whatever, but having to learn each of the moves and then dance them in order was probably the most challenging, but challenging in a good way because I enjoy a challenge and I really enjoy dancing. So put those two together, it was a wonderful time. So how we learned the dance, my sister-in-law learned the choreography, and then we would meet together and she would teach me what she had learned and found, and we would dance together. And we did that a lot, quite a few times we got together, to the point where we pretty much had the dance all the way down between us two. And then Aaron would go and dance with Bryce and practice with him and teach him the steps and all that. But in the learning the dance with Aaron, she is shorter than me, and then I would put on my dancing heels and we would try to dance together, and it was quite hilarious.
I feel like this midget here, like you're tiny Prince Charming, and Bella's like this tall with her giant dress, and I'm like, I can't reach around you, but we'll pretend we're in the right position here. Yeah, that was fun.
It was twice, I think, that Bryce and I actually got together and rehearsed the dance.
Totaling maybe 3 or 4 hours.
We should have practiced a lot more, but we had practiced so much with Aaron that once we got together, we already knew what we were doing, and it was just a matter of figuring out little details. The dress dances. It's a third person in the dance.
It was a totally different dance once you added the dress. It makes sense why some of the moves were the way that they were. Because when you're first trying it without a dress, it doesn't necessarily make sense why they're in a certain position. But once the dress is there, you can't hold hands unless you're in that position. So it really helped us to figure it out and make it look more like the original. And I don't know, more like a princess and prince kind of thing, because you have to get the stance just right, or when he starts moving one way, if you don't move the same direction, you're gonna get stepped on, so.
In practicing the dance, it was a great way to see what was wrong with the dress and then figure out a way to fix it.
Each time something would get stepped on or ripped, or it was like, oh, I'll just re-sew it. We'll do it again next time. I'm like, okay, you're gonna re-sew the entire dress and then come back and practice again.
One of the main things was with all the weight of the skirts, when you spun, they just kept spinning even if you wanted to stop. And so the waistbands just wrap all around and move, and it's really a mess. That was just one thing that I didn't even think about until we started dancing the dance. So anchoring those waistbands of the petticoat and skirt to the corset, which is the fundamental part of this costume, was a game changer. If you did not wear a corset with this enormous dress, your waist would kind of just be torn to shreds with all the layers of fabric moving around you, and their force just like rubs on you. So the corset really saved me in a lot of ways, and it helped support the weight of the skirt. I felt so bad for Bryce because when I twirled near him, it would just all slam right into him all the time. It was fun. It was great.
So we only did one night of rehearsal, which sounds crazy. I was out there with all my gear, testing it out, making sure it all looked good, could get all the movements that I wanted. So weeks up to the production, I was watching the original scene from the movie a lot and took a lot of notes on like what type of shots they had, how many shots, and kind of was looking at how I want to get that. And then on rehearsal night, was more of like, okay, what does this look like? What do my angles look like? What lenses do I need to use? And so while they were running that, I was testing out the camera. We also didn't have a 360-degree set. We only had like a 180-degree set. So whenever we're doing a lot of the movements and the shots, we couldn't exactly replicate it from the movie because we could only use 180 degrees to get some of those shots. So it was a little bit difficult trying to match shots from the movie when we didn't have a full set.
The next part to this whole process was figuring out the soundtrack that we were going to use for the dance. The original soundtrack is gorgeous and you just want to dance when you listen to it, but because of copyright, we could not use the original. So the next part was to bring in Durgan. So Durgan is Aaron's brother and did an amazing job at composing and performing the song to perfection, really, that captured the same feeling and emotion of the soundtrack, but was not the original soundtrack.
I've been making music for a lot of years, playing music most of my life, and been doing composition for about 8 years in and out of college, and then I've scored some small short films and then other projects like this. So one section of the song that was kind of tough to do really is just blending the sounds. A lot of what I use is not a live orchestra, so I'm doing a lot from the computer, and so I was trying to make sure that it sounded like it was a live sound, real live orchestra. A lot of the samples that I use are from a live orchestra, is the BBC Symphony from Spitfire, and I love all of what they do, but it helped make it sound really realistic. So then it was all about blending and just really getting that to match so that it sounded nice in the track.
When we first started laying it all out and figuring out what was going on, we were watching it with the original soundtrack, and every time we practiced we would use the original soundtrack, and so we already knew, oh, this note means spin at this point, or this, when the music kind of builds here, do this. And so once we switched the song, at first I was a little unsure when certain moves were, but the counts were all the same. It was a learning curve once we switched songs, for sure.
One of the main things that got changed from the original thoughts and ideas to the final product was really the lighting. I was imagining this scene to be shot in daylight. In the middle of the day, we could eliminate some of the complexities of a night shoot because you don't really have to worry about lighting as much. You still got lighting stuff to figure out, but for the most part, you're not trying to take a dark space and lighten it up enough that it shows up on video well and you can see what you're doing and everything. So that was the original thought, eliminate some complexities, but the more we thought about it, it just didn't quite work with the storyline of Cinderella and the clock striking midnight to film it in the middle of the day. So that was one of the reasons why it got changed.
But then we kind of looked at what the dress looked like in the daylight, and it really didn't show up that great. It was really hard to see all the sparkles and all the layers of the dress. And we also don't have controlled lighting that way. So it could be cloudy, it could be sunny. You know, if it goes longer, it might start becoming dusk. And so we decided to do it at night, which caused another problem. Now we needed lighting, we needed a lot of lighting.
We brought in construction grade generators with these huge lights on it that lit up the whole set and just worked really well.
We didn't use studio lights for budget because they're a lot more expensive to rent. We had to problem solve there, add some big diffusers. Usually you don't use that type of light for video production. It throws off just the vibe of the light, the warm, the cool. It just gives a really weird look. So we had to deal with that look. We dealt with it and made it work.
So when we went from the idea of shooting in the middle of the day to now shooting at night, you can create some great dimension with lighting and the darkness because we could add in things like candles. So that was something that I was really excited about, but also in the dress regards, the sparkles on the dress really pick up light well. So adding a bunch of candles in all different places also helped to reflect on those gems. So overall, having it at night Even though it added some extra difficulties with lighting, we were able to bring in some really cool aspects of a night shoot. We wanted to do flowers because the Cinderella scene with the enormous, beautiful ballroom, the flowers that are in that scene are just incredible. And so we wanted to try to replicate that as much as possible on a budget. And so that's when we brought in my sister Clara. She's done some floristry before, and so she was able to come in and she took the flowers and greenery and stuff that I purchased and just was able to make magic happen with those flowers. And she just did an incredible job. So with those arrangements, we set some of them up at eye level, and then we did some hanging arrangements, which of course added some extra complexity to the set design. But fortunately, my dad and brother were able to figure out a way to get some poles set up, but they were metal, so they were very obvious. And so we grabbed some fabric, tore it into strips, and they just wrapped it up the pole to cover that shiny metal. So overall, creating that ambient, candlelit scene worked out really well on all levels. The one aspect of all the candle lighting was the fact that we were outside and there's wind outside. And so often the candles got blown out. And so there was a lot of times that people had to go light the candle before we could go on to the next shot, or mid-shot we're like, well, all the candles are out, so we had to take some breaks to light those. But it was so worth it. And you can also notice in the final video, we start off with some really tall candles, and within 5 minutes, they are down to these little nothing bits of candles. But we did shoot the scenes chronological, and so that didn't come up as a challenge as far as the candles going like this throughout all the different shots. We had to come up with a way to create a dance floor in the middle of a field on a budget. And thankfully, my dad has a bunch of wood that happens just to be the right type of wood that you can put together to make a dance floor. My brother and dad took charge of that, and they created a dance floor out of pallets and sheets of wood.
We laid down pallets, and then we screwed down plywood on top of that to kind of give it a real firm base. The ground wasn't perfectly level, so we had to use a lot of shims and stuff to keep it from creaking and keep it pretty flat as best as we could.
And then my sister and I came in and we did the final touches of that dance floor. We first painted it because we wanted to just really get a nice solid looking floor, because the wood itself wasn't nice enough to just be a wood floor. So we did the paint, and we got a flat paint because we didn't want this glare that could be challenging with the camera work. But that actually ended up being next, or we did it and then realized we had to do something different. The dress just wasn't working on the floor, because there's so many edges in the petticoat that any roughness to a floor, they kind of catch up on. If you're wanting to dance backwards, the hems catch up on the rough floor, and you eventually step on those hems that got all caught up. So when the dance was being practiced on carpet, that's where a lot of our issues were coming from, was the fact that the carpet was keeping the frills in place instead of letting them slide across the floor. And then we went on to practice on a wood floor, and the difference was incredible. How much the skirt just stayed out of the way, because it had freedom of movement to just slide where it needed to go.
The floors we were on made it very easy for the dress to move around and slide. And then when we went to do the actual video, the ground was a little rougher, so it was really hard to get that dress to move.
So we had to do some problem solving of how to make a wood painted floor shinier and glossier so that the dress could slide across it. We ended up just buying some high gloss polyurethane, and we started painting that across the entire wood surface.
So I ended up doing that like the night before production night.
And we barely had enough to finish it. It definitely wasn't as good as a polished ballroom dance floor. It was very makeshift, but overall it worked. It served its purpose. It was a nice level surface for the dancing. when Ella walks up, knocks on the door, and the doors open and she enters into the ballroom. You just have to have that scene. But the challenge was we're not in a ballroom. We don't have doors to open up onto the dance floor. So what are we gonna do? So we just grabbed some old doors, we propped 2 of them up, and then we had 2 not propped up ones, and how they stayed up was 2 people behind the doors, and when I knocked, they manually moved them out of the way. And that in and of itself was quite an accomplishment to get that shot with 2 people being the hinges for those doors. That added complexity, but we did it and we got that shot, and you can't tell, at least I can't tell, that there were people behind the doors that were physically lifting up the doors and moving them smoothly and evenly together. We were having some trouble with the doors wobbling and such, and it ended up being one of the scenes that took the most amount of shots to get the final shot. So it was a lot of opening the doors. There was this one time the doors opened and I was about to walk in, and my mom was right there lighting the candles. And it was supposed to be just Bryce, of course. So it was just a hilarious moment, and I just like collapsed in laughter.
For the production, just 1 camera on a gimbal, and then we had Durgan shooting our behind the scenes.
It was fun to see everything on set doing that whole video, and really enjoyed both the creating side and then getting to see it kind of happen on the video in person.
When we were videoing, we had Bryce clapping every time we started a new scene. But then we realized that we didn't need the clap, because you usually do the clap when you're recording audio and video, and you want to sync both of those. But we weren't recording audio, so we didn't need the clap. So we just kind of ended up doing it for fun, I guess.
The shoot was totally different. Not totally different. The dance is the same, but actually being there's all these other things we're thinking about besides just the dance. We're thinking about, we want to get the same angle as the movie. We want to make sure the hair is just right, the dress is in the right position, Bryce is not making a silly face.
Hi, welcome to the set of Beauty and the Beast. Wait, where we will be filming Aladdin, part 2. This is the part where she comes out of the water and becomes a princess after being a mermaid for several years. Her stepmother caught like 101 like dogs with the spot Dalmatians. She's really evil.
So we're thinking of all the things at once really affects how the dance goes, because you're not just focusing on, oh, we need to do these steps to get to this point. You're thinking, we need to do these steps with the camera over here and make it look exactly like the movie. So that just added a whole nother element of focus that we hadn't had during the practice. I think it actually helped some of the moves to look a lot better because everyone's in character and trying to copy these perfect, stances and everything. But it was really cool.
It was kind of cold, but I was dancing, so I didn't really notice that.
It's cold for you. Yes. That's so weird.
That's the memory that I don't have of it being cold. I don't remember that part. Everyone else was like wearing their down jackets and standing near the heaters, and I'm like, what? I'm fine. But apparently it worked out, because if it was any warmer, I think I would have been like sweating the whole entire time. Definitely one of the challenges of the whole night was hearing the music well enough to feel the beat and know how to dance the part that you're dancing. Because we had these large generators with the lights, the music was drowned out.
but I'm like counting and clapping, like shouting, and you guys can hardly hear it over the music. It was your mom's idea to back up the car and turn on the car speakers so that we could hear it loud enough to actually go along with the music. There was a lot less yelling, I feel like, after that.
In the movie world, you don't take one-shot takes of a whole thing. You usually are cutting it up into smaller bits and different scenes. It just makes it a lot easier for the actors and for the cameramen. So we started chopping it up basically from scene to scene, and they would dance that one section of the scene. We would shoot that. There was a couple times we did one take, but most of the time we did like 5 to 8 takes of each scene. And then once we liked that shot, then we'd move on to the next scene.
We would shoot the little sequence that we wanted with this camera angle, and then we would just stop the music, stop the dance. And so many times you were just like, you'd just be getting into the big twirl, but we already got the angle, so cut, and you kind of be like, oh, we're not gonna continue the dance. So it was sometimes a little bit of a letdown, like, can we just keep on dancing?
Perfect!
But in the end, that would have been really exhausting to dance the whole thing all the way through, all the time. So with the way the skirt moves, there's so much of it that once you're spinning, the centrifugal force of that dress going around doesn't want to stop when you want to stop. It just kind of carries you along. And with the corset, I was able to very quickly stop the skirts if I wanted to. But other times you're just tired, so you kind of just let the skirt take you along with it until it decides to slow down, and now the dress is stopped. That was the part that I knew learning the dance, that once we put the skirt in here, it's gonna be a whole other ball game. But it was still like, once we got the dress, and it was like, oh, that really does change how you do that move. And it was a little bit crazy, but on the night of the shoot, it went so well. I was so happy with how it was just moving. I felt so in character just wearing the dress, dancing in the dress with the environment, candles and flowers, and having people fix my hair and fix the dress for me. Just very fun memories and moments in that evening. I think some of the funniest shots of the night were probably me jumping. I did a lot of jumping. Just to get everything laying and smooth, that's really the most efficient way of doing it. But also there was some great helpers, my mom and sister. They were able to help smooth out the skirt when it needed to be. And so that was just really great to have that help there to make sure everything was looking as best as it could be.
Definitely the greatest challenge was avoiding stepping on the dress, and I didn't do well. There were several times that I stepped on the dress in practice and in the real thing. Lifts were tough because I'm trying not to step on it. I couldn't get my feet close enough under her to really get a good lift. But yeah, really the biggest problem was trying not to step on it. And all of the waltz steps, I mean, you can, in the video, you can see like it's clearly made to be going in a circle because I cannot actually step forward towards her most of the time because the dress is just preventing any dancing.
I think I stepped on the dress way more than he did because my heels would either get caught in one or I would be going backwards with the waltz and just like get stumbled up on all the frills and stuff. So honestly, I think I stepped on it more than he did. It's just more obvious that he would. Yes, there was an issue with it at certain points, but for the most part, we were able to prevent that from happening. So pretty early on, when we would start a shot and where we were in the dance, I would just kind of lift up my skirt, step closer to him, and drop the skirt on his feet. So he already had his feet under the hems, and so he could kind of do the next steps without worrying about stepping on the hems. There was only one time that the dress actually ripped, and it wasn't actually the dress that ripped. It was a thread that I had hand sewn on part of the dress together, and that part broke. And so the fabric itself didn't tear, which was great because it was the expensive outer layer, and to have that fabric tear would have not been good. So having just the thread break was a much easier fix on the night of the shoot. That was really the only mishap of the whole evening. Considering the dress was being worn for 6 hours straight and majority of that was dancing, that was pretty good. I was pretty happy with that. I honestly think the hardest part was the whole neck thingy that she does during the dance, and it looks so graceful in the movie. But learning it, I didn't focus enough on what she was doing and how it was looking. So by the time we got to the shoot, I was a little bit not prepared for how to do the neck thingy. And I had it in my mind doing it one way, but it kind of looked like I was trying to break my neck the whole time. And it was not very graceful. And that's one thing that I wish I could go back, learn better and do it better for the shoot. Finally, by the last part of the shoot, I think there was a few times like, oh, this is how the neck thingy works, and it felt graceful. But for the most part, it was a bit of a challenge and didn't turn out as graceful as it could have.
Whole entire dance, none of that is CG, none of it is overlaid sparkles or colors, is all 100% real. That is what the camera picked up. It's really cool.
Overall, this whole production and just journey from start to finish encapsulated what community is. And we were able to bring in so many different people, friends and family. We worked on a common goal together, and that's what brings people together the best, I think. So there's just so many people out there with such creative talents, and to be able to bring some of those people together to create this video was just really special. It was great having my little nieces and nephews there.
Did you get your own Cinderella dress? Yeah! Woo!
You almost smiled.
That was close. Okay.
Just think. Oh, hi, it's you.
Get closer.
1, 2, 3, 2, 2, 3.
That's great. 1, 2, 3, 4. Down, walk. 1, 2, 3, 2, 2, 3, 3, 2.
You almost did it!
It's so close! So close!
Did you trip? Or did you just give up?
She lost her shoe.
Leave it there for right now. Clara! Out of the way!